In May 2025, an event unfolded that sent ripples across global diplomatic corridors. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, was flown to Moscow aboard a Russian presidential aircraft sent personally by President Vladimir Putin. But what made headlines around the world wasn't just the rare diplomatic gesture. It was what happened en route. U.S. fighter jets reportedly tracked the convoy, only to back down when confronted by the formidable Russian military escort. This incident, loaded with symbolism, showcased the growing divide between East and West and cemented Burkina Faso's alignment in a shifting world order. In this extended documentary, we explore the layers beneath this event. The strategic symbolism, historical context, military significance, and long-term implications. We dive deep into why Russia made such a bold move, how the U.S. responded, and what it means for West Africa, the Sahel region, and global politics. The man behind the revolution. Born in 1988, Captain Ibrahim Traoré began his journey as a young military officer who trained both in Burkina Faso and abroad. By the early 2020s, his name would become synonymous with revolution, resistance, and regional realignment. In September 2022, he led a coup that deposed the military regime of Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Santiago Damiba, citing security failures in combating Islamist insurgents. Military turned politician. Traoré's transition from soldier to statesman was anything but conventional. At just 34, he became Africa's youngest head of state. His fiery speeches against neocolonialism and unapologetic calls for African sovereignty struck a chord across the continent, gaining him a devoted following. Expelling French forces. One of Traoré's earliest and boldest decisions was to expel French military forces from Burkina Faso. After decades of military dependence on France, this act marked a turning point. Anti-French protests surged, embassies were targeted, and a new narrative emerged. Africa was tired of being a pawn in foreign conflicts, clashing with U.S. influence. Though the U.S. maintained a less visible presence than France, its intelligence and surveillance capabilities in the Sahel were substantial. Traoré began publicly criticizing the U.S.-led security architecture in the region, accusing it of failing to combat terrorism and exploiting African resources under the guise of partnership. Traoré and the Kremlin. In July 2023, Traoré attended the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. There, he had a highly publicized meeting with President Putin. While other African leaders requested aid or loans, Traoré made headlines for his bold statement, "Africa does not come to Russia to beg." His tone was defiant, and Putin took notice. Military cooperation and the Wagner legacy. Though officially unconfirmed, numerous reports point to Russian military advisors, some linked to the remnants of the Wagner Group, now operating within Burkina Faso. Their role: training the Burkinabe armed forces, securing mining regions, and allegedly protecting Traoré from internal coups. The reopening of Russia's embassy in Ouagadougou in 2024 signaled a permanent and deepening presence. The historic flight to Moscow. Presidential invitation. In May 2025, ahead of Russia's Victory Day celebrations, President Putin extended an official invitation to Captain Traoré. But instead of waiting for Traoré's own delegation to arrange travel, Putin made a dramatic move. He dispatched one of Russia's presidential aircraft, complete with a full security detail, to personally collect the African leader. This wasn't just hospitality. It was power politics, a public display of Russia's willingness to protect its allies, no matter the geography. The presidential convoy. The aircraft, an Ilyushin Il-96 presidential jet, departed from Moscow flanked by Su-35 fighter jets and long-range radar surveillance aircraft. It landed in Ouagadougou under tight security. Traoré boarded, and the Russian military entourage prepared for a direct route back to Moscow, through international airspace, including contested zones where NATO aircraft patrol regularly. U.S. interception and withdrawal. The encounter. Somewhere over the Mediterranean, U.S. fighter jets, believed to be F-16s from a NATO base in southern Europe, intercepted the convoy. Military analysts believe the U.S. sought to assert a presence or perhaps confirm the identity of the passenger. But when it became clear that Traoré was aboard a Russian state aircraft under full escort, orders came to disengage. Why the US backed off? Engaging with a Russian presidential plane, especially in peacetime, could provoke a diplomatic crisis. The risk of escalating into an international incident was too high. The move signaled respect, but also revealed the limitations of American power when confronted with equally determined and militarily capable adversaries like Russia. Victory Day symbolism. On May 9, 2025, Traoré stood shoulder to shoulder with President Putin and other global leaders during the Victory Day military parade in Red Square. Burkina Faso's flag flew prominently. In speeches, Putin praised Africa's brave sons who resist foreign domination. Behind closed doors, Traoré and Putin reportedly held bilateral meetings discussing joint counter-terrorism operations, Russian arms deliveries and military training, nuclear energy development via Rosatom, possible mining partnerships in gold and uranium sectors, educational exchanges and scholarships for Burkinabe students. This was not just diplomatic optics, it was the blueprint for a new era of Russia-Africa relations. NATO and Western governments respond. While official statements were muted, insiders within NATO expressed concern over Russia's growing footprint in Africa. The U.S. State Department called for transparent and sovereign partnerships in the Sahel, a subtle jab at Russia's expanding influence. France's reaction was more visceral. Media and political commentators accused Russia of exploiting instability in former French colonies to undermine European security and access to resources. The African response. Across Africa, particularly in Mali, Niger, Guinea, and Chad, Traoré's trip was seen as a triumph. In Ouagadougou, thousands celebrated the return of their president, who they believe is standing tall among global giants. A Sahelian bloc. With Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger increasingly cooperating militarily and economically, all under transitional governments skeptical of the West, a new regional bloc is forming. Some have dubbed it the Sahel Triangle. If Russia continues to deepen ties with